tea for you.
All human life here, too, but slightly more antique. What the Ghan is famous for, though, is its speed. We left Marie at midnight last night, and we're due to reach Alice Springs in the centre of Australia at breakfast time tomorrow, a schedule which means maintaining a cracking 17 miles an hour. But circumstances often conspire to delay this ambitious timetable. The ground here is so dry that the track was laid direct upon it without ballast. Unfortunately, though, this is the floodplain of Lake Eyre, and when the waters do come, they wash the sand away from under the rails. Sometimes the wind blows the sand over the rails. Sometimes the train's been held up by plagues of grasshoppers or woodlice. Then it comes to a halt, sometimes for days, occasionally for months. There's a story about a woman on this train who keeps asking the conductor what time they get to Alice Springs. Every time the train stops, she asks him. And the conductor begins to get a bit impatient. What's the hurry? He says, we'll get there sometime in the next few days. So the woman says, look, I'm due to have a baby. Well, says the conductor, you shouldn't have got on the train in this condition. And the woman says, when I got on the train, I wasn't in this condition. And when you look at the track we're traveling over, you can't help wondering if 17 miles an hour isn't reckless bravado. The geometry seems to be melting and buckling slightly in the sun. Dry rot and white ants are disturbing the sleepers in their beds. On the rails go, though, on into the heart of Australia, staggering and weaving like two exhausted explorers, due north into the eye of the noonday sun. The Ghan. An odd name. It's short for Afghan, because before there were cars and lorries in Central Australia, they used camels. They imported them originally for the building of the first overland telegraph line along the same route as the railway. They spread and multiplied. In fact, Australia now exports fine thoroughbred racing camels to the Arabs. Camels carried the rails and sleepers to build this railway. The Afghans were the camel drivers they imported to look after the beasts. They were called Afghans, of course, because they came from, well, almost everywhere except Afghanistan. The coaches are German for some reason. They look as if they were built for the Kaiser. And a slow, soothing, timeless world it is. More like an ocean cruise than a train.
They're doing 50. Right-hand wheels in the dirt, the left-hand wheels on what's left of the road, and just go like hell. Hope nothing's come over the hill, you've just gone over blind, you know. Just fly out. That's the times when we're really happy that we're drunk.
A cruise across an ocean of land. Nothing much to mark our passage, except a glittering wake of old beer cans. We're stopping again. Grasshoppers? Green fly? No, Unadata. They let us off here for 20 minutes to stretch our legs and take photographs.
she?
She's 14.
Oh, is she?
That's
Have a
15.
look around here, love. Oh, and how come you're going a blonde one? Eh? How did she come to be blonde? It's beautiful, aren't you? Is she a little girl?
Boy.
Boy. Boy. How does he have blonde hair? Is his father blonde? He have blonde hair? Why?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, well, that's how he has blonde hair. I was in Fiji. Do you know anything about the Fijians where they have dark curly hair? And I went along and one lady had hair as blonde as could be.
What brought the line here? There's no copper, there's no water. Well, it was unemployment mostly. It was something to keep people going in the depression of the 80s. We haven't lost hope yet, though. Straight on for China at 17 miles an hour.
You come waltzing Matilda with me, waltzing Matilda, Matilda, my darling. You come waltzing Matilda with me, waltzing Matilda, needing the water bag. You come waltzing Matilda with me.
But the most characteristic readjustment of all in the line's northward trek to China is this. 2 days or so in from the coast, halfway across Australia, the line expires. Where am I? In Alice Springs. Well, it's somewhere at last. But it's an odd place to build a railway to. It's the middle of nowhere. But then, that's the point of Alice Springs. That's why the tourists come, to see what nowhere looks like. Alice Springs became somewhere for a very simple but oddly circular reason. It was because the railway ends here. Before the line arrived in 1929, this area had a white population of about 40. And the railway ends here because, well, because if it wasn't going through to the north coast, and there was never any serious hope that it would, and if it was going to end in the middle of nowhere, and it was, then it had to end, well, somewhere. And this place was rather more somewhere than anywhere else because there was a repeater station on the Overland Telegraph here, preserved now as a museum. And they built the repeater station here because in this dried up creek they found a water hole, a puddle of river around the base of this rock, left over in summer from the previous wet season. Now even the puddle's dried up. Only the water line on the rock remains. A dried up water hole. That's what we've been traveling towards for the last 800 miles. The middle of nowhere. And if you're going to be anywhere in nowhere, there's a certain appeal to being in the middle of it, which is almost exactly where Alice Springs is. In fact, the dead centre of Australia is north of Alice. But for tens of thousands of tourists every year, the hub of the continent is this strange, bald, bulging navel 260 miles to the southwest. Ayers Rock, after Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House, the most famous object in Australia.